consulting company specializing in operations, training, teaching workshops, and seminars. Rita is a member of the Atlanta Business League, a Continental Pinnacle professional member of America's Who's Who, and is also a VIP Woman of the Year Circle member of the National Association of Professional Women, and she's also a member of Women's Speakers Association and Shapiro International Speakers. Rita is a Douglas County Chamber diplomat, and she serves on the boards of the College and Career Institute of Douglas County and the Danning Center. Rita recently founded the Adamola am I pronouncing that correctly? A Fasina-Thomas Foundation, a nonprofit organization which awards scholarships to economically disadvantaged but well-deserving youth who have a desire for a university education. And in her spare time, Rita likes to spend time with her family and she likes to garden. I am so pleased that she's able to join us today. I know she's very active in the community, and if you haven't already heard of her or seen her out and about, I'm sure you will from now on. So thank you so much for joining us, Rita.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be among you today. First, welcome to Teamwork, Effective Communication, and Acceptance. And that quote that's there is one of my favorite quotes because, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, where you came from. Everybody can learn something from each other. No man, no person here is by themselves. And when we come together, we build such a beautiful tapestry, and thus the quote. So, as far as the workshop objectives are concerned, there are a few things that I would like to get across. First, emotional intelligence and communication strategies is on page 1. Define and practice self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, and empathy. Identify barriers to communication and how to overcome them. Listen actively and effectively. Verbally communicate with others. Successfully communicate with others in a nonverbal manner. Establish common ground with others. Identify the benefits of emotional intelligence. Relate emotional intelligence to working together and engaging with the Junior League of Douglas County, and effectively impacting others. And then the second part of the workshop, I'd like to talk a little bit about diversity. The definition of diversity, the meaning of stereotypes and biases, how they develop, and reasons for our own perspective. We want to list strategies for removing these barriers and encourage diversity in ourselves, in the Junior League of Douglas County, and in the social community that we focus the league around. We also want to identify ways to encourage diversity within the Junior League of Douglas County and prevent and discourage discrimination. If you have any questions throughout, please don't hesitate to ask. Just stop me, okay? And so getting started. An employee with high emotional intelligence can manage his or her own impulses, communicate with others effectively, manage well, solve problems, and use humor to build rapport in tense situations. So self-awareness, I'm on page 2. Being aware of yourself is being aware of your abilities, your skills, your knowledge, valuing your responsibilities, being confident in what you do. Self-awareness is not just important for self-esteem, but it's important because it helps you to open yourself up to change and to acceptance. The lack of self-awareness causes you to not realize your worth and not realize what a good job that you're doing. Self-regulation. Self-regulation pretty much is self-control. And it's a direct result of pressures, good pressure, bad pressure, or no pressure. As far as good pressure is concerned, it helps one to aspire to be like the people around them. Bad pressure, you lose your motivation and you lose your self-control. As far as no pressure, you react through your emotions more than anything else. Self-motivation. When we're self-motivated, we work toward a cause. We compare ourselves with ourselves. In other words, we compare the things that we do today against what we've accomplished yesterday, instead of comparing ourselves with somebody else. We have a conscious effort not to give up. We don't dwell on the past, and we think positively. Let's talk a little bit about empathy, the sharing of feelings, putting ourselves in other people's shoes, so to speak, giving that effective response, that true response, and being there and understanding. Now, empathy and sympathy are two different things. So, sympathizing with somebody, it's more subjective than it is objective. And with empathy, we just need to be able to tell the difference and to be able to empathize instead of just sympathizing with somebody. Empathy, we can help somebody. Sympathizing, we kind of get ourselves buried in what their issues are. To be able to be aware of ourselves and to be able to regulate our emotions, to be motivated, to empathize with others, we have to be able to communicate effectively with others. Unfortunately, there are so many communication barriers. Like most things in life, communication is far more complicated than what it seems. So let's look at some of the common barriers and how to reduce their impact. We have language barriers, we have cultural barriers, and we have barriers as far as location. So let's talk about language. When we have a language barrier, usually it's somebody that just doesn't speak the same language as we do, or somebody who may speak the same language, however, say English, it's not their home language. In other words, they may speak French, and English is their second language, so sometimes they use words that we're not really familiar with, or they don't have the same meaning as we do, as we use them. On page 5, when we're in the United States or you're in a different country, if, say, you're in the Midwest and you're from the South, very different dialect, very different wordage. So we have to be cognizant of that when we're speaking to other people from different areas. Cultural barriers. We use the same words, different meanings. We encourage questions. We prepare beforehand, or we should prepare beforehand if possible. My mother-in-law, my husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my in-laws live with me. They're from Nigeria. I'm from Jamaica. Two extremely different cultures. So when we have an issue, my husband used to say, it's because you guys just don't understand each other. And it took me the longest time to realize that, you know what? We don't understand each other. We're not exactly speaking the same language. Our cultural differences are such that it stops us from sometimes understanding what the other is saying. For instance, my mother-in-law used to say, you can't say that to me because I'm an adult. Okay? You're 73 years old. I'm 57 years old. I have grandchildren just like you do. I think I'm an adult as well. And for the longest time, that just seemed like it was something that was demeaning to me, that she would tell me that I was a child. But I had to realize that's her culture. An adult in the Nigerian language means it's somebody who's older, not necessarily somebody who has reached the age of 18 or 21, the way that we see it. Differences in time and space. Time zones. When we're talking to somebody in a different time zone, we need to make sure that we're scheduling a convenient time to get together. And we utilize things like email. So, again, let me use the example of Nigeria. When my husband and I first married, my phone would ring at 3 o'clock in the morning. Anybody that knows me knows that 3 o'clock is not exactly my finest hour. So I would be a little upset, you know, when people would call the house at 3 or 4 in the morning. Well, 3 or 4 in the morning here is 8 and 9 in the morning in Nigeria. So for them, it's a completely acceptable time to call. But we had to get our schedules together, and we had to talk about the time zones, and we had to talk about why it's not okay for you to call me at 8 o'clock your time because it's 3 o'clock my time. Listening skills. So let's turn the tables a little bit and talk about our listening skills and how effectively we receive messages. So we've got 7 ways to listen better today. First, when we're listening to somebody, we need to make sure that we're not talking, that we're not doing anything else. We're not answering the phone, we're not cleaning up, we're not distracted, but we're listening. Sendelaney has, I have a plaque from Sendelaney that says, "Be here now." In other words, give your full attention to whomever it is that you're talking to or whoever's speaking to you. Avoid interruptions. Sometimes someone comes in and interrupts us. It's okay to say, you know what, let me finish this conversation, I'll get with you later. When we're listening, we need to do 90% of listening and only 10% of speaking. Let that other person get across to you what it is that they need to get across. Related conversation. Make sure that what your comments are relatable to the conversation at hand, and that we're not saying something just to say something. And sometimes we do that. Maybe we're trying to let the other person know that we're actually listening, but make sure that your comments and your responses are definitely relatable to the conversation at hand. For heaven's sake, if somebody doesn't ask you for advice, don't offer advice. You know, that can be very frustrating to a lot of people. Beware of your environment. When you're trying to have a conversation with someone, make sure that you can hear the person, that you are looking at the person. One thing that I always get kind of miffed about is when I'm walking through the mall and I pass a bench and a manager is having an interview with someone. How can you hear? You've got kids that are running around, you have loud talking, and it just seems to me that it's just so distracting when you have all of that going on. What I would do is ask you to come into my office. You know, every store has an office where we can actually sit quietly and we can talk about whatever it is that we need to speak about. Take appropriate notes if it's required, but make sure that your note-taking doesn't disrupt the conversation's flow. Very, very important. understanding active listening, try to identify where the person is coming from. Use the frame of reference. Again, listen attentively. Ensure that your physical environment is conducive to listening. Lean in. Respond appropriately, either non-verbally or with a question or by paraphrasing. If I'm speaking to you and I'm leaning in and I'm looking in your eyes and I'm watching you, then you have a good idea that I'm paying attention to exactly what it is that you're saying. If you're speaking and I'm off to the side like this, what does that tell you? I've shut you out. I've shut you out completely. So be cognizant of your listening style. Be cognizant of your body language. Sending good signals. Well, we've got nonverbal. As I mentioned, body language has an important part, plays an important part to communication. Nodding your head, showing interest. Quasi-verbal, or using those those sounds that let a person know that we're actually listening. Asking open-ended questions, ensuring that you understand what the person is actually saying. Don't guess, because if you guess, chances are you're going to get into trouble because you're not going to fully understand. So if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. In our day-to-day communication with others, we have encountered several possible scenarios where questions help us gather information, clarify facts, and communicate with others. So let's look at questioning techniques that can be used throughout the communication process. Open-ended questions. Those who, what, where, when, why, and how questions. Those are open-ended questions, and they're questions that will not shut down a conversation. They're questions that require an answer other than yes or no. Closed questions limits the answer to yes or no, and it does shut down the conversation because after you ask, did you have breakfast today? Yes. Or your child comes home from school, how was school today? Or that's an open-ended. Was school okay for you today? Yes, and they go in the room and shut the door. No conversation. Is it 5 o'clock yet? Basically, once that conversation is shut down, everybody's ready to leave. Probing questions. Probing questions seek clarification. They seek completeness and correctness. They determine relevance. They drill down to the root of the conversation, and you can also summarize with probing questions. Communicating with flexibility and authenticity. Whatever you do when you communicate, you have to be honest about what it is that you're saying. Set a clear message, especially, in the business world, we're always told that we have to be diplomatic. We're always told that we have to be politically correct. And though that may be true, we have to also be honest. We also have to make sure that we're not sugarcoating any issues. Because when you sugarcoat an issue, you can cloud the real meaning of what's being said. Establishing common ground. Common ground is an extremely powerful tool. It's important that we establish common ground with others. So in the junior league, everyone here is bound by a common ground commitment to your mission, to your community which you impact. But each individual may have a different motive for why they're here. It's very important that we focus on positive connections and we allow those to help build stronger relationships, thus better communication. Every one of us is bound by a common thread here at the Junior League. So it's a powerful tool. Always look for the positive and build those stronger relationships. Body language. We have to make sure that we're very conscious of our body language. Actions speak louder than words every single day of the week. Body language is a valuable skill if it's used correctly. If you're slouching and you're like this, then body language that you're giving off is telling me that, you know what, you're not really interested in what's being said. However, if you're looking in a person's eyes and you're sitting there with rapt attention, that tells me that, yeah, that person is interested in what I have to say. And it's a very valuable form of communication. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. This is what determines what the listener hears. Your emotions, we have to watch our emotions. We have to watch our tone, watch our body language, and the pitch of our voice. I don't know about anybody else, but when I get upset, my voice tends to rise about 3 octaves higher. So anybody that knows me knows, you know what? Yeah, she's a little upset. So we have to regulate our emotions. So in regulating our emotions, we can very well regulate how we say things. Let's take, for example, a sentence that's in this handout on page 12, where it says, it's asking somebody, please shred that document. So if I ask you to please shred this document, I'm asking politely for you to do something for me. But if I say, see that document over there? I need you to shred it now. How does that come across to you? It comes across as being rude. It comes across as being very demanding and commanding. And quite frankly, I wouldn't like to be spoken to that way. So we have to be careful that we don't speak to other people that way. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could we ask you to speak up a little bit?
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
air conditioning is, does the mic work?
Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. I'll just speak up. I'm so sorry.
That just kicks on periodically, but not branch out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk a little more about emotional intelligence and how to work together and engage with the Junior League of Douglas County. Emotional intelligence plays a vital role in your organization. How you feel about yourself has a direct impact on how you're going to interact with other people. Both social and professional proficiencies are developed as a result of emotional intelligence. So when we talk about social proficiencies, we're talking about empathy, which is just being aware of other people's feelings. We talk about intuition, the inner sense of the feelings of others, and then political acumen, the ability to communicate, being a strong leader, being a strong influence. As far as personal proficiencies go, we're talking about self-awareness, understanding your own emotions, self-regulation, managing your emotions, managing your trustworthiness or exuding that trustworthiness, and then flexibility. And then motivation, having the drive to take the initiative and commit to things until they're completed. Whether you're a brother or sister, whether you work together, mother, father, doesn't matter. You have two people together, there are going to be disagreements. There are going to be disagreements. We all think different thoughts. We're all our own person. But you know what? We can disagree constructively. We can disagree where we're leaving everyone else's self-esteem intact. And that's very, very important. So disagreeing constructively, being positive, can lead to being productive. Confirm the other person's idea before you actually present your own. There's an example on page 13 between Ted and Michael. Ted had an idea, and he said it to Michael. He said, because of their duties, I feel the customer service phone team should arrive 30 minutes before their shift to bring up the systems and to make sure that everything is okay before they take their first call. Michael, he agrees with him. I understand your point, Ted. I agree the phone team should arrive early to prepare themselves. However, I feel that 15 minutes gives them sufficient time. So there is a little bit of a disagreement, but he maintained Ted's self-esteem. He understood where he was coming from. He agreed, but in that agreement, he also had a little bit of a change. In other words, I don't think it's going to take 30 minutes. I think 15 minutes is fine. Making an impact. We have opportunities every day that we face that allow us to make an impact on the lives of others. How we impact others is up to us. It requires a conscious effort on our part to decide if we're going to leave a legacy of good or leave a legacy of bad. A lot of people, everybody, I think, wants to create a good first impression. And we've all heard the saying that your first impression is a lasting impression. So how do we create a good first impression? First, by our physical appearance. We want to make sure that we are professional in our appearance. You know, my daughter, my youngest one, she asked me, Mom, when you wear jeans, how come you don't look as casual as I do? Now, she put it in another term, but that's basically what she meant. And I told her, I am in front of so many people that if I go out to the store and I've got my hair in rollers and I look like I just rolled out of bed, what do you think those people are going to think about me? And do you think that they're going to hire me for their organization? I don't think so. So regardless of whether I'm working or whether I'm or whether I'm on my leisure time, I still need to look presentable. And presentable doesn't mean that I always have to wear a dress or have to wear a suit or anything like that. I can wear jeans, just nice jeans, just decent jeans. Comb my hair, you know, maybe a little less makeup, but still put on something. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about physical appearance. Next is body language. Body language, as we said before, speaks much louder than words. Our posture, our facial expression tells 1,000 words, speaks 1,000 words. If we're thinking one thing, but what we look like says something totally different, guess what? The person that's listening to us is going to see what we look like, see what our expressions are, and that's what they're going to go with, not necessarily what you said. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how would you suggest to address the issue of body language? So someone, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you see that they're sitting like this, turned away from you, and I mean, this presents something. And so how would you suggest to effectively communicate that what I'm seeing is not us communicating, it's you shut down? Because that is something that happens quite frequently, and I'd like to know how we can address it in our group so that it's not offensive as well.
I think we have to be honest, and we have to be candid, and we have to ask questions around, is there something else that's on your mind? Do you think that we can continue this conversation another time when you may be feeling a little better? Have I said something to offend you? Be honest, be candid, and that's the only way that I know to effectively address something that I'm seeing that may not resonate very well with me, such as somebody's body language that's just not there, not present.
So you would address it?
I would address it, yes. Does anybody else have any questions thus far? Okay. Spoken words. Eye contact is a part of body language, but it's also a part of speaking to someone. So I can speak to you, Lynn, and I can be looking at that shade over there. What does that tell you? I'm really not engaged in whatever it is that we're talking about. So it's really important that we have good eye contact, that our tone and our pitch is where it should be. Also, the speed of your voice. Listen to how you're saying things. Now, a lot of people always tell me, you speak so slowly. That's just me. I have another friend who speaks so fast that sometimes I really have to lean in to hear exactly what she's saying because she speaks so quickly. Smiling when you're talking to people, that goes a long, long way. And smiling is professional. If you have a grumpy face and you're trying to uplift someone, you lost your battle, because nobody wants to hear what you're going to say if your face depicts something other than that compliment that you're supposedly giving someone else. When we talk about body language, we also should speak about handshakes. When we're shaking somebody's hand, we don't want to break it. We want to have a firm handshake, but not hurt the other person. We also want to make sure that it's not an extended handshake, whereas the other person's looking at you and saying, okay, you can let go now, because that can give another message entirely. And, I don't know about anyone else, but I've experienced that. So, choosing our words carefully, spoken words, making sure that we're not changing the message, but we are choosing the right word. Especially in this day and age where we are so cognizant of being politically correct, sometimes we're in a situation that requires us to be a little bit more proper about things before you actually say them. Choose your right words. Choose words that are not going to offend anyone, that don't seem short, don't seem demeaning, but choose words that welcome conversation. Give the person a chance. Don't use jargon or slang, and you certainly don't want to use colorful words. Okay? Assessing a situation. If we're involved in something or we see something that we should be a part of, but we just don't know how to react to it, I would take a step back and I would look at that situation objectively to get the real picture of what's going on instead of jumping in. And sometimes when we jump in, we say things off the fly that are taken, they can be taken out of context, or maybe we just didn't say the right thing. So when you're assessing any situation, make sure that you take a step back. Be aware of your emotions. Is this a situation that angers me? Is this a situation that makes me upset? Or is this a situation that makes me happy? Be aware of what your emotions are and make sure that you control them. Know what it is that you're getting into. So if somebody invites you to a meeting and you're not so sure about the group, ask questions before you get there. Find out what it is about, what their motives, their operating values are, before you actually get yourself into a situation that you may not want to be in. Being zealous without being offensive. Being a zealous person is really a good quality. However, we can go overboard and we can offend people with our zealousness. And that sends such a negative message to others. We have to make sure that we're considerate in being zealous. Bring other people along for the ride instead of being commanding. Focus on getting the job done. A lot of people focus on getting the job done, but you know what? Quality is always better than quantity. So if you're going to get the job done, and you should get the job done, get it done the right way. And always look for that renewed excitement. We don't want to keep beating the dead horse. We want to always think of new and better ways to approach every situation or every question. And then you'll have people that actually want to go along with the ride. However, if you don't have that renewed excitement, people are going to be bored and they're going to drop off. So, the next thing that we're going to talk about is that we're going to talk about diversity. Would anybody like to take a 5-minute break before we get into this? No? Okay. So what is diversity? Diversity is the inclusion of a wide variety of people of different races or cultures in a group or organization. It's vital that every employer, employee, organizational member, leader has an understanding of the concepts of diversity. In your handout, I have some related terms and concepts, and I'd like to just go through them quickly. Ableism. Basically, ableism means it's just a discrimination of people who have disabilities. Affirmative action. These are policies that take race, ethnicity, gender into consideration in an attempt to promote equal opportunity or increase ethnic or other forms of diversity. Ageism, discriminatory beliefs against another because of their age. Anti-Semitism, discrimination against Jews. Anti-Arab discrimination, again, discriminatory beliefs and behaviors directed against Arabs. Classism, discriminatory beliefs and behaviors based on differences in a social class, and this is generally directed toward the poor. When I think about this, I think about how we look at the homeless. A lot of us look at the homeless as people that may not want to work, as people that are lazy. And, you know, if you talk to a homeless person, you see that, you know, a lot of times this is so far from the truth. Unfortunately, people get stuck in a situation. My youngest daughter's first piano teacher, brilliant pianist. He played keyboard for Fela Kuti in Nigeria. So he's world traveled, brilliant mind. He came back to the United States and he fell on some very hard times and he was homeless for quite some time. When my husband first met him, he was living on the streets. He was making arrangements to get he and his wife housing. Since then, he was able to move into an apartment building, but it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't for lack of trying. Sometimes our system is very difficult. You know, you can't get a job because you don't have an address, or you don't have an address because you don't have a home. Well, if you don't have a home, the vicious cycle. You can't get a job. So a lot of people have fallen into that. So, you know, I always tell people, it's very easy to judge. It's very hard to put ourselves in other people's shoes and to see the life that and to walk the life that they've lived. You know, I know me myself, some people I see that have overcome such tremendous, tremendous odds. And I wonder, do I have the stamina to be where they are today and to have gone through what they have gone through? So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves, I think, before we place judgment on situations that we may not understand. Okay, so let's go on to culture. The ever-changing values, traditions, social and political relationships, and worldwide shared by a group of people bound together by a combination of factors that can include common history, geographic location, language, social class, and religion. Discrimination, the same kind of belief systems and behaviors, both personal and institutional, directed against individuals or groups based on gender, ethnic groups, social class, language, or other perceived differences. Ethnocentrisms, discrimination against other ethnicities. Heterosexism, discrimination against gay men, lesbians, transgender people. Minorities, a part of the population differing from others in the same characteristics and often subjected to differential treatment. Multiculturalism, the acceptance of multiple ethnic cultures for practical reasons and or for the sake of diversity. Racism, a system of privilege and penalty based on a person's race. And then sexism, discriminatory beliefs and behaviors directed against women. Understanding stereotypes. Everybody is different, and we encounter a diverse set of people every day. Some differences cannot be seen just by looking at a person. Treat each person you encounter with respect and dignity. And through this part of the module, we're going to begin to identify what, if any, stereotypes a person may have. One thing that I've come across living here and living anywhere actually, people look at you and they judge the book by their cover. There are so many people that are multicultural. I myself, I'm Jamaican. I married a Nigerian. My paternal grandmother is from India. She's from Madras, India, which is now Chennai. My paternal grandfather is from Scotland. My maternal grandmother is an East European Jew, and she married a black man from the United States. So our family is multicultural. When people see myself and then they look at my brother's very light, very thin. I tend to gain weight and lose it at the drop of a hat, whereas he's 60 years old and just as lean as can be. We look so different. When my nephew, my brother's son, lived with me last year, people would say, "Oh, that's not your nephew." My nephew looks a lot like Lynn. His mother is from Puerto Rico. She has Indian features, and his skin color is very light. And people just couldn't understand how this could be my blood relative. People judge books by their color, by their cover, instead of looking at the person inside. It's very important that you look at the person inside, not the color of their skin. So, understanding stereotypes. Stereotypes versus biases. Stereotypes, oversimplified conceptions, opinions, or images. Some words that are used with stereotyping: cliquish, aggressive, blue collar, lazy even. Stereotypes are, when we're using a stereotype, it's not a subtle thing. When a person is biased, however, it is subtle. It inhibits impartial judgment. An example of this is found on page 18, where someone said, "Jane Gonzalez, who has a degree, will be joining our staff." Well, what does that say to you? This person is implying that Latinos don't have degrees. This is an exception. Otherwise, why would you say they have a degree and should be joining our staff? So be careful of the nuances, be careful of the words that we use, and be careful of our own beliefs and how that can affect other people. Identifying our baggage. We have intangible things. Baggage is defined as something that's intangible, such as our feelings, our circumstances, or our beliefs, and they do get in the way. We have to monitor our thoughts. So we need to ask ourselves, have I judged this person before I got to know them? Something very important. If we are judging them before we get to know them, then we are stereotyping them. Stereotyping is a learned habit. It's not something that we were born with. So just as it was learned, it can be unlearned through practice. So, understanding what this means, we need to know as much as we should about our own feelings. We need to be able to identify our feelings and We need to identify those things that stop us from seeing each other as being fully human. We need to filter our feelings. And once you filter your feelings, once you're honest about your feelings, once you have those discussions, you can actually change your baggage or how you feel. So how do we break down these barriers? We're each responsible for changing our stereotypes and breaking down the barriers. And in this module, we'll look at some actions that we can take to break down our barriers and move past our stereotypes. Rather than making sweeping generalizations about people, we need to get to know them as individuals. That will reduce the stereotypes that you hold toward other people. Changing your personal approach. What we can do is that we can collect information. We can divide out the facts from the opinions, the theories, and the suppositions. So what this is saying is that you have to base your judgment only on facts, not on your opinion, not what you think, not your assumptions, but only the facts. And periodically go back and refine your judgment based on more facts. And try to continue to expand your opinion of the person's potential. Encouraging organizational changes. We have to learn about the values and the beliefs of other people. And we have to be open to other people's values and belief systems. Every one of us here is unique, and we need to value each person's uniqueness. And also we need to watch for changes in relationships. You know, is there hostility for some reason or another? And if there is, we need to address it immediately. Suggest and take steps to implement discussions, workshops aimed at understanding and eliminating discrimination with friends, colleagues, social clubs, even leaving copies of publications around where other people can see it. And you know what, that's going to precipitate a discussion when people see you do this, because they're going to realize what your thought process is, and they're going to ask you why you believe what it is that you do believe. Encourage social changes. We can implement discussions or workshops. Our buying habits. Are we buying based on what we think our group likes, or will we go out of that realm or that group and buy outside? Educate and challenge others to embrace diversity instead of staying in that same box. And once we do that, we're going to be better equipped to challenge others about their stereotypes. Being proactive. Organizations who address diversity proactively will have the most success implementing and enhancing diversity programs. So, encouraging diversity within the JLDC. There are many compelling reasons to encourage diversity within the organization. A diversity program offers the following benefits to an organization. We've got increased productivity, retention and growth within the Junior League. It will encourage our marketing capabilities, the fostering of a wider talent pool when we reach outside the box, becoming and being perceived as the organization of choice. You're going to have better morale with everybody that's in the organization. Increased creativity of your members, and improved decision-making processes and capabilities. Several traits that are common to successful organizations that encourage and support diversity. People behave proactively. We're not waiting for somebody else to take the lead. The support from the top down, from our leadership coming down, leadership-driven initiatives, clearly communicated throughout the organization. Promoting ownership through the organization. You know, one thing that I always told my employees when I worked for corporate America was, you guys have to take ownership. Only then will you have the pride that you need to succeed. Think and behave inclusively. You're not an island. Everybody is included. And make diversity initiatives a part of your everyday organization. So, preventing discrimination within the Junior League, we need to ensure that we maintain open communications, that we obtain up-to-date information, that we consider joining another professional organization that deals with diversity. Policies that we can implement. Anti-discrimination policies, which define discrimination, including the language, making sure that these certain languages are prohibited, certain conducts are prohibited, and that we see them, we address them immediately. Anti-harassment, make sure that everybody understands what harassment is, and that we have a no tolerance policy. And then other policies such as an open door policy, open communication policies, these can flow between the members of the organization. Ways to discourage discrimination. If you hear something, again, speak up. Because if you don't speak up, it's going to fester. And if it festers, it's going to turn ugly. So just speak up. You know, if somebody has an issue, don't embarrass anybody. Just talk to them one-on-one. They'll appreciate it. Understand the unique needs of some groups, whether it be cultural, whether it be a lifestyle, whether it be ethnicity. Create an atmosphere where everybody is included. So wrapping up, although this workshop is coming to a close, my hope is that your journey to improve your organization's knowledge of teamwork, effective communication and acceptance, and skills go along with it. And it's just the beginning, that we're working toward a more inclusive atmosphere. So just some words that I saw that I thought that were important from Gandhi: an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. Guy Finley: never speak out of anger, never act out of fear, never choose from impatience, but wait, and peace will appear. And Brian Tracy: confidence on the outside begins by living with integrity on the inside. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you for your attention. And if anyone has any questions, I'm open and available. Any questions? Thank you very much. There is an evaluation form. If you would take the time to go ahead and fill that out for me, that's just my report card that tells me how I did. And then also, I handed out a workshop, a worksheet rather, on awareness. And what you can do is that you can read through the list of personal characteristics, circle the 10 that most describes you, and then of those 10, put a star beside the top 5 characteristics you exhibit the majority of the time. And this just opens up the question, who am I? Am I aware of myself? Am I aware of my thoughts? Am I aware of your feelings? And this is just something for you to keep.
I hope you didn't feel like you were being rushed. It was just early with the lunch, so you've got time.
Okay. Okay.
Did you cut it short because you felt long?
Well, I kind of went through, there was something that I didn't do, and that was the workshop